People's lives are either an example or a warning, and you get to decide this year what yours is going to be. Is it going to be from the land of possibility and wonder and excitement? This is what we were able to create in this year? Or is it going to be from the I wish I would have? Oh, it's the same problems. I'm waking up having the same bad day. And what I want to share with you today in this podcast episode are 5 paradigm shifts about how I choose to look at basic challenges that everyone seems to have throughout each year. And these are one of the things that have set us apart. This is how we've been able to grow and thrive and change and succeed faster than we ever have before. In fact, this past year, I'm proud to share with you, it was the greatest year we ever had in terms of business and revenue and sales. And we've done this year more than the previous 3.5 years combined. And I'm not sharing that to impress you. I'm sharing it to impress upon you that this was the first year where I really embodied these principles. And from embodying these principles, it allowed us to grow and scale and take off and change. And I want to be able to give that to you as well. And so this is the Path to Mindset Mastery podcast. My name is Brad Bizek. I'm a mindset strategist and coach, international inspirational speaker, and creator of Appreciation Academy. And in this episode, you're going to learn how to maximize your life, just like all our other episodes. You're going to learn how to take every area of your life to the next level and beyond. What we're here to do is help you elevate your mindset, your career, your relationships to a level beyond anything you ever thought possible. And this is where we make it happen. And so what are these 5 different paradigms? These paradigms that allow you to thrive when it seems like the world is in chaos. Like I was saying just a couple minutes ago, our life took off at a time where it seemed like the world started to slow down, right? This all started towards the end of 2020, early 2021, when there was a lot of worldwide pessimism. That's where things started to really take off for us. And so I want to share with you, what were some of the ways that we looked at the challenges of life, what lens did we look at the challenges of life through? What allowed us to stand out when it seemed like the world was so alone and isolated and pessimistic? What made us get to that next level? And there's a couple of different things. Let's start with number 1. The first, and I challenge you to look at your entire year coming up and do a little reflection on the last year based on these lenses. And when you adopt these, it can allow you to transform in 2022. It can make this year the best year of your life, and it can happen fast. It's not something where it's going to take all this crazy amount of effort and work and all this stuff to make it happen. You can actually feel the differences today when you adopt these mindsets. So number 1 is alignment. What does that mean, alignment, right? Let's use the example of chiropractic, right? If you think about a chiropractor, when you go in for an alignment, what do you typically feel afterwards? You feel more grounded, you feel more centered, you feel more able, you feel more like possibility, you feel more energy, right? Well, that's true in the body and it's true in life. So I want you to take a look at the emotions behind what you do. Do you feel pulled? Do you feel like the efforts you're putting in is positive intentionality, or do you feel like you're forcing things to happen? If you're not in alignment, there's probably a lot of forcing that's going on. There's a lot of, I'm making myself take this action, and it makes you feel held back from the best version of you. And people don't respond to you in the way that you otherwise would want them to. You don't seem like you're actually making progress towards your dreams because you're not in alignment. What we need to do is, instead of creating stories about our circumstances, we need to identify our starting point and be excited about a compelling vision of the future. If you think about what most people do when they're facing different challenging circumstances in their life, they create stories about them. Everyone does this, but take a look at your stories about your circumstances in life right now. Are your stories about what's happening in your life, are they empowering you or are they disempowering you? If they're disempowering you, it's going to end up making you feel out of alignment. You're not going to be pulled toward your dreams. But if your stories empower you to be the best version of yourself, then you show up with that energy and it allows you to actually solve the challenges. So a great way to analyze if I'm in alignment or not is, do I feel pulled for something better, or am I forcing things to happen? And so take a look at your work or your career or your business. Do you feel guided towards something more? Do you feel like you're on the cusp of something big? Do you feel like you're about to break through the next level? Do you feel like this effort has meaning? Do you feel like it really, really matters that what you're doing? Or do you feel like everything's a chore? If everything's a chore, you've lost your alignment and you need to come in for an adjustment. And so what's a way to do that? How do you actually readjust and get back into alignment with what you really want? I'll tell you about our quiz coming up in just a little bit. That's an amazing way to start it. But if you want some pointers right now, a great way to do it is to link contribution to what you're doing. Contribution to future possibility. If you're in a situation where you're you want to change, but you feel stuck there, chances are you're not looking at what could be. You're not looking at a greater vision of the future. You're not pulled towards the long-term vision of the future. And if you're not pulled towards the long-term vision of the future, you're going to feel out of alignment because you feel like your efforts are just aimlessly being thrown at a wall, hoping that you're making art when it's not actually happening. And so what we want to do instead is link contribution to a greater possibility. What I used to do, I used to be in retail merchandising. I worked for a multi-billion-dollar fashion retailer, and I hated it. It wasn't for me, right? And if you're in fashion retail, if you're in corporate America, whatever it is, no judgment whatsoever, just wasn't for me. I always knew I was meant to be an entrepreneur, but it wasn't for me. And what I started to do is I was that toxic guy that when I came into the office, I would bring a toxic energy with me where I would kind of drain everyone around me. And I wish I would have done this, but looking back, one of the greatest lessons I learned is if I would have linked my day-to-day efforts with what I was actually creating for the world, I would have had more energy and felt more in alignment. If I would have said, you know what, I am in charge of merchandising for a company that's allowing young men to feel like the most confident version of themselves, their most impressionable times of their life, that'd be way more impactful and way more high energy and way more aligned. Saying I'm going into this office and writing these POs for these stripe layouts on these shirts that I don't really care about. I'm sitting in these meetings talking about, trends in fashion retail that I don't care about at all. It'd be a very different energy if I would have go in with the mindset of contribution. And so with what you're doing right now, the checklist, a quick little checklist to see if you're in alignment. Number one, do you have a compelling vision of the future that's pulling you, that excites you, that makes you feel alive? That's number one. And number two, do you link contribution to the greater good of society by your actions towards it? If the answer to both those are no, you're going to feel out of alignment. You're going to notice that everything feels like a chore and it's going to feel forced. Don't worry. You can take our quiz. It will show you how to get back into alignment with these things. But for now, just do a little analysis. Am I set up to make this the best year of my life? Am I being pulled towards a compelling vision? And am I linking contribution to what I do each day? Or am I feeling like, you know what? I'm stuck where I am right now. These challenges are really, really hard. And what I'm doing right now feels pointless. Where do you feel with that? That's number one. If you want an amazing year, you have to be aligned, meaning your emotions are pulling you towards a brighter future. Number two, if you want an amazing year, make sure you are spending your time focusing on what you do want instead of what you don't want. Now, what does this mean? I'll give you an example. Literally earlier today, at the time I'm filming this, I was on a session with someone where we were talking about what this person's vision was for this next year. What do they really want? And her response was really simple. It was, I just don't want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore, and I don't want to feel like I have to keep telling my kids no. Now, does that energy feel aligned with the best version of her? No, it doesn't. So she's not in alignment. That's the first piece. But when she focuses on that, what's going to happen? She's going to end up creating more of the same because she's obsessed with what she doesn't want. In fact, most people in life aren't actually, in fact, everyone's not actually stuck. Most people are just looking for why they're stuck. And if you were to spend just as much time focused on where you want to go, your dreams, the ideal, the possibility, instead of searching for why you're stuck, you would have what you want. Most people are just obsessed over why they're stuck, and that's why they don't have what they want, because they're trying to figure out what's caused their problem. It's kind of like, why am I so fat? Your brain will go, because you're a pig, right? And you have an answer. Versus, how can I be healthy? Very different answer your brain gives you. So if her objective is not live paycheck to paycheck anymore and not have to say no to my kids, there's no energy, there's no alignment, there's no excitement behind that. So she's not pulled towards something brighter. But I paused her and I stopped her. I said, what do you really want? She's like, well, that's what I want. I was like, no, it's not. You don't just not want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. It's like saying, I just don't want to be in debt. Do you really just not want to be in debt and have a zero balance in your bank account? No. What you're trying to say is the ideal. I want to live vibrantly, alive, and abundant, and be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, whenever I want, right? Like, that's what you're really saying. So I said, in your dreamland, what would you actually want? Like, what's the thing that excites you, that makes you light up? And you could see her entire state change. She goes, you know what? I want to take my kids on a Caribbean Disney cruise. And she lit up like a Christmas tree. She was just playing around and exciting and just passionate, just like, wow, like this. It was like a whole new person because she focused on what she actually wanted. And by the way, when she focuses on a Caribbean Disney cruise for her family, does she feel more aligned? Yes, she feels more aligned. She feels more pulled towards that because it's a vision of the future. And so as you're taking a look at this year, take a look at, are you spending your time focusing on avoiding what you don't want? Or are you focusing on what's pulling you towards something amazing? Is it your version of, I just don't want to live paycheck to paycheck? Or is it your version of a Caribbean Disney cruise? Is it your version of, I just don't want to be in debt? Or your version of vibrantly alive and abundant? Where do you tend to live? If you focus on what you do want, magic starts happening. And this is when our business really took off and really changed. I was living in alignment with the best version of me. And I was focused on where I want to go. I was focused on the dream, the possibility, what could be. And I was letting that pull me. And every year I need to do a reanalysis. I'm actually in this process right now as I'm filming this about what's next for us. Where are we going? And that feeling can be confusing at times. You might be like, well, I don't know. What does this look like? I need clarity on it. But embrace that struggle. Embrace that growth. Reframe it to mean that this is helping you to serve more people. Reconnect to that sense of contribution of what this is going to do long term for you and your family and your kids and all that stuff. You'll start to feel pulled from it. It'll be a beautiful thing. So number one is, if you want this year to be the best year of your life, you need to be aligned, pulled. Number two is you need to focus on what you do want instead of avoiding what you don't want. What's number three? Number three is release perfection. Listen, society primes you to try to be perfect. If you think about what starts happening in school, right? You're not taught how to be happy. You're not taught wealth in school. What are you taught? You're taught how to be perfect, how to be an assembly line worker. That's what you're taught. Just think about it. What does society tell you? If you don't get an A+, if you don't sit down and shut up, then you're going to be a failure, and you do not want to fail in life. If you fail in life, that's the end of it, right? And so you're told to sit down, shut up, not express your ideas, not try new things, and get an A on this test. You need to study and get an A on this test. And so what happens? You're groomed to learn to avoid failure. You're groomed to be perfect, which is really just fear that you're not enough. And all it's doing is training assembly line workers. But if you really want a vibrant life, you need to fail. Listen, I told you this a million times in this podcast series. Success comes from good judgment. Good judgment comes from experience, and experience is typically the result of bad judgment, right? You need to make mistakes along the way. So what we need to do, if we want to make this year the best year of our life, we need to let go of perfection. Now, there's a way to do that. And our quiz will help you tremendously with this. But there's a way to do this. First, we need to understand the consequences of it. If we understand the consequences of an action, it makes us not want to do it if those consequences are negative. So what are the consequences of living in perfection? Number one, you're likely not going to start on your dreams because you don't know how. Everything's going to feel overcomplicated, right? If you have a goal of losing weight, let's say 30 pounds this year, and you're living in perfection, then everything's going to feel heavy and overwhelming. It's going to feel too intense to even start. And so you're likely not going to start because you don't know how. It's like wanting to read a book about swimming versus getting in the pool. You'll only actually get good at swimming by getting in the pool, right? But we're trying to make sure we have the right strategies all the time. Make sure we know how it's going to go perfectly before we ever do anything. And when we live that way, we never actually get to where we want to go. So I want you to ask yourself, are you seeking certainty on how to do something, and that's what's preventing you from actually doing it? If that's the case, you're likely living in perfection. That's the first way perfection guarantees pain. You'll feel this hole in your heart because you know you're meant for so much more, but you're just seeking certainty on how to do it. And it's not a fun place to be. So you're going to feel like you're stuck. You're going to feel overwhelmed when really you're just trying to be perfect. And perfection is just fear that you're not enough. That's it. What's the second way perfection guarantees pain? The second way is that everything you do will be to avoid failure. So you're afraid to fail, so you don't really put yourself out there. Every message, let's say you're trying to prospect clients, right? Every message you send will be meticulously set up and scripted and just disgusting, and none of your heart will be in it because you're afraid of being judged. You don't want to ruffle any feathers. You don't put yourself out there too much because you don't want to fail. And so no one actually experiences all of you, and so no one actually joins you, which makes you actually fail even more. And so like we talked about, we need to realize that failure is a gift. It's how we're actually going to thrive and grow. That's how we need to shift our focus with perfection and realize failure is what will serve us. So we're not going to start because we feel like we don't know how, and we're not going to play all out because we're afraid we're going to fail. And so we feel just constantly stuck, evaluating, wishing things were different. But there's a third way perfection guarantees pain. And that's no matter what you do, it won't feel like enough. You'll complete your entire list and you'll still feel stressed out that you have more to do. You'll hit a goal and then be like, well, what now? Where's my excitement? Where's my passion? Where's my worth? It feels like your worth becomes a moving target and nothing you do feels like enough. That's what perfection does. Haven't you ever had that where you hit something and you're like, well, is that it? Right? Think about the greatest goal you ever achieved outside of something like having a family. Something that you've worked for, like getting your CPA or something like that. How long did the happiness last before something was wrong again? Was it 3 weeks? Was it 3 days? Was it 3 minutes? I feel like most people, it's a pretty short period of time because goals don't bring happiness. It's happiness that brings goals. It's what makes it, when you're in alignment with the best version of you, that brings the goals too. It attracts things to you. It makes things a lot easier to navigate. And so if you're living in a state of perfection, you're going to feel consistently overwhelmed because you're always fearful that you're not enough. So if perfection is fear that you're not enough, how do you actually get over it? You increase your sense of worth. If you think about what happens when you increase your sense of worth, you no longer question if you're enough. If you no longer question that you're enough, you no longer feel the need to be perfect. And so you're willing to fail because you're not worried that you're not enough. So how do we increase our sense of worth? Well, worth equals love over time. And most of the time we're expecting other people around us to give us that love in order for us to feel it. But if we base our self-esteem on others, then it's others' esteem. It's not self-esteem. Self-esteem is based on us. It comes from doing things we didn't think we could do, and it comes from giving ourselves love over a period of time. So worth equals love over time. What if worth equals self-love over time? If you consistently give yourself love, meaning celebrate yourself, praise yourself for how amazing you are, well, then you're not worried. Your sense of worth builds. You're not worried that you're not enough. When you're not worried you're not enough, you don't have the craving to be perfect. When you don't have the craving to be perfect, you don't need to know the how before you act. You don't fear failure as nearly as much. You just go after it, and you feel fulfillment before you get even to the peak. You feel a sense of progress no matter what. So we need to release perfection if this is going to be the best year of our lives. We need to realize that being kinder to ourselves and being a little bit nicer just each and every day, not just to ourselves, but to other people, it's going to make us feel amazing. Does that make sense? That's number 3. So number 1, we have alignment, making sure we feel pulled. Number 2, we have focusing on where you want to go instead of avoiding what you don't want. And number 3, we have perfection. Now what's number 4? Number 4 is a powerful one. It's called being a role model. Everyone's life is either an example or a warning. And you have a choice at the beginning of this year. Are you going to make your life an example or a warning? Are you setting up the game right now so you're to the point where you're actually being an example of what's possible for other people? Or are you a warning sign of what people should avoid? You have the ability to decide that right now. And so there's a way to do that. We need to adopt a role model mindset. Now, how do we adopt a role model mindset? Well, first of all, we need to realize that we are always being an example to other people no matter what. If you have kids, if you have family, if you have friends, if you have other people, you're always being an example no matter what. What type of example are you being, though? Are you being the example that someone would want to follow, or the warning sign that someone would want to avoid? If you want this to be the best year of your life, this paradigm shift of being a role model and filtering everything through that lens makes your life so much easier. So there's a question you can ask yourself to make yourself more of a role model, and it's really, really simple. How can I deal with this as the highest version of myself? If you answer that question, you're already a role model. Think about just that filter alone, being a role model. If that is a filter for your life, a behavioral filter for your life, and you view everything through the lens of being a role model, then you answer things differently. You respond to situations differently. You respond to challenge differently. You show up as a better version of you. You're more present with your kids. Everything starts to change. So how can I do this how can I deal with this as the highest version of myself? And how can I do it in a way knowing that I'm an example? When you adopt a role model mindset and adopt that filter to your life, everything changes with how you show up. And so it's time that you do some analysis on how you're showing up. And so before I tell you number 5, I want to empower you right now to take my What's Your Unique Success Archetype quiz. And the reason for that is because it's going to give you some insights into how you are currently operating. If you want this year to be the best year of your life, you need to know your starting point. You need to know where you're at. If you're going to go for something bigger, like imagine GPS, right? Your GPS needs to know your destination, yes, but if your GPS doesn't know your starting point, it can't plot a course. you're going to think you're somewhere completely different. We need to know exactly where we're at. We need to know what our beliefs are. We need to know how we're currently acting. We need to know our lens that we view life from. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to feel stuck. It's going to feel overwhelming to try to change because you're trying to plot a course from somewhere that you're not actually at. So I want to encourage you right now to take the What's Your Unique Success Archetype quiz. It's going to show you your greatest beliefs, the things that are limiting you, the things that are empowering you. It's going to show you how to actually be that example for other people. You're going to get just some insights into why you're programmed the way that you're programmed. And it's going to be incredibly powerful to see. You're going to start to piece together, that's why I do that. That's why I think that way. That's how I normally respond that way. And you can start to analyze if you're being a role model through that lens. It's going to show you how you're currently being a role model and how you're failing to be a role model. It's totally free. It takes 60 seconds to do. It's linked up right below this episode. You can also find it at quizzes.bradbizjack.com. Again, that's quizzes.bradbizjack.com. And you'll be able to find that quiz, be able to take it, and you'll be able to find out what your unique success archetype is to see if you're on track to being a role model or a warning sign. And we want to make sure that you are a role model. And after you take that quiz, it's going to show you where you're at, but it's also going to show you what to do about it. It's going to show you what's next. So head to quizzes.bradbizjack.com right now, take that quiz, or it's linked up right below this. It will change the game for you and show you where your starting point is so you can thrive in the future. Be a role model. It will change the game for you. But there's one more paradigm where if you look at life through this lens, everything will shift very, very quickly. And it's really simple. It's become a long-term person. Become a long-term person. Now, what does that mean to be a long-term person? Most people are short-term people. They choose the short-term pleasures to either avoid pain or to gain pleasure. The short-term avoidance, the short-term distractions, the short-term purchases, they're short-term people. And what ends up happening? They end up with long-term pain. Let's use money as an example because this is how a lot of people operate. Most people choose what they want now, and they focus on, I must have it now. And so they don't save money. They're focused on, I have to have that TV, I have to have that, I have to have that, I have to make sure and go on all these trips and do all this stuff. I need to focus on all of that right now. And so they don't actually save, so long term they experience pain. And one of my favorite quotes from Dave Ramsey is, if you live like no one else, you'll get to live like no one else. Right? And so what we need to do is flip that and become a long-term person where you choose the short-term inconvenience, the short-term choices that will lead to long-term pleasure. And that might be in the world of money, saving 20% of what you make or more. Saving as much as you possibly can, paying yourself first so that you have a beautiful long-term future that excites you, that sets you on fire. And so I want you to take a look at where you're currently being a short-term person. Where are you choosing the short-term conveniences? Maybe you're avoiding sending those messages. Maybe you're choosing TV instead of discipline in your business. Maybe you're yelling and controlling your kids instead of really working on teaching them values. Maybe it's something where you're choosing the cupcake instead of the spinach. Where are you choosing short-term pleasures? And how might that lead to long-term pain? If you view your entire life through the lens of short-term focus, then what ends up happening is you just trickle on pain over the years and you start to build up a story that this is just how it is. It's not. Just having a filter of being a long-term person, you start to evaluate situations differently. How will this choice affect me over the long term? So be a long-term person. Ask yourself, if I were to apply a long-term focus to this choice right now, what would I choose? You'd probably make a different choice. You choose the short-term inconvenience or challenge or maybe struggle even sometimes. And you'll have long-term pleasure. If you view life through that lens this year, what's best for the longevity of this year, you'll have a very, very different life very, very quickly. These are the 5 paradigm shifts for a breakthrough year. Number 1 is alignment. Making sure you are aligned with the best version of you. You're feeling pulled. You're feeling a sense of contribution in what you do. Number 2, you're focused on what you really want instead of avoiding what you don't want. Because whatever you focus on, you create more of. Number 3, you've released perfection because perfection guarantees pain. You start celebrating yourself. You build up your sense of worth by going after it imperfectly. Number 4, you be a role model. You answer, how can I deal with this as the highest version of myself? And how can I do it in a way that I know I'm an example for other people? You know that your life is going to be an example or a warning. You get to pick which one it is. Be a role model. If you need help with that, take that quiz. And finally, be a long-term person. A long-term person that filters all of their choices and decisions based on what will be best for them over the long term. If you do these 5 things, this will be your breakthrough year. You'll have a very different life at the end of this year than you did at the end of last year. That's my challenge for you. I promise you, if you do this, everything will be different. This is what changed our life. This is how things exploded for us. And I just want to share that with you so you can have it in your life. So if you found value today, make sure you share this episode. Screenshot it, put in your stories. Make sure you leave us a rating and review. If you found value in this, share with us how you feel about it so that we can spread this message to more people. The higher the ratings and reviews, the more people that see this. And make sure that you take the What's Your Unique Success Archetype quiz. When you take that quiz, you're going to get so much insight into where you are, if your success is predictable, if you're on track for the life that you really want, and it's going to give you insight into what's holding you back and what to do about it so you can break through faster than ever before and make this the best year, the most successful year, the happiest year of your life. So go take that quiz at quizzes.bradbizjak.com. It's also linked up right below this. Thank you so much for tuning into the Path to Mindset Mastery Day. My name is Brad Bizjak. Go out there today and every day and live your life with a genuine smile on your face. I'll see you next week.